So that's going to bring us to chapter 3. So before we go, we can go ahead and exit out of this station or this session of MicroStation. And now we'll do a little bit of housekeeping and go back to our C drive, the projects. We can go ahead and delete our 2204950 file. And then we'll go back to our data set, go to the chapter 3 where it has the parentheses 3, the zip. Go ahead and grab this, and we can drag and drop that back into our CE projects.
So we got a data set, and which one do we drag open?
Chapter 3, the parentheses 3.
To open up the one that's got the 3 and then go back.
We can go one deeper. Yeah, so we're going to start chapter 3. I don't know if that really matters. It doesn't really matter. So go ahead and kick off Power Geopack again. So we'll go ahead and open our, get back into the DSGN RD01 file. Yeah. So at the top of 3.3 or 3-3, we just did exercise 3.1, the preparation. So we're in our DSGN RD01. So we're going to move on to 3.2. And then in this exercise, the existing pavement edge lines from the topo file are copied to be used as milling lines for the proposed improvements. So in our MicroStation reference, attached, displayed, topo, and RD, it looks like we have those already attached. And then our right of way. So in this one, so what we want to do is merge in these edge of pavement lines. Hopefully this, or the pavement asphalt EP, and change those to pavement milling. So there's a couple different ways to do that. We can, the first way the book is telling us to do is go ahead and highlight, or go to your element display, which is up here in the corner, or level display. You go ahead and click on that topo RD 01. And then we're going to grab the pavement asphalt EP level.
Scroll over. Click on that. And then right click.
So if you're not seeing it list, if you click on the elements that are used, and then we can go ahead and select all off. That's going to turn everything off, and then we just need to find our pavement asphalt EP and turn that on. And that's all we're going to do in our level display manager, so we can close that. And then we'll come back to our reference dialog box and do a right click on the topo with it displayed and click on merge to master. And what that's going to do is kind of give us, that'll give us another merge references. Then we'll click on the screen. It's given us a prompt. We've selected one reference to merge into the current design with the levels, and this is kind of the what you see is what you get. And then it'll detach that topo RD. So that's one way to do it. It looks like we're going to have to featureize all these back to the milling. Bear with me. I'm going to do Control Z. And then bear with me a second because there's a tool up in our workspace under Design Apps and then Copy Reference File Levels. And if you bring that up, you find the level that you want in the left-hand side of the menu under Topo RD01.dgn. And what this dialog box does is it brings it in, but it will not detach it from your references. So if we pick on pavement asphalt EP, we hit the plus. Is that the only one we're doing? Lines, and then we click process. It should go through the work. Now if we turn this Topo RD off, it brings in default too. Is that supposed to do that?
Since the level didn't change since this data set.
No.
Is that similar to merge into master?
Yes. It does the same thing. It won't detach your reference. If you look down here, it kept that, so it'll just merge it in or copy it into your existing file.
With the intelligence, or if there was like an intelligence?
If there was intelligence, I think it strips that off, doesn't it?
Yeah, just made it
Merging it,
Yeah, it strips it off, merging it.
just like any merger.
So any merge, yeah. So you'd have to put that intelligence back onto it. And that's kind of what we'll have to do now since everything is on this default. So we'll have to go through and select all those. But easy way to do that is hold down and right click and say select all on level by element and go ahead and select that default. That's going to turn those all on. And then if we go to our element selection tool, or no, we want to go to properties. If you hover over it and bring up your pop-up menu and select properties, that's going to allow us to, why is it not allowing us to featureize it?
I think with multiples you've got to go set feature tool.
No. So go ahead and select all on by level. We'll select that. In this instance, we have to use our set feature definition tool. And then our feature type is going to be linear. The feature definition is going to be set to pavement milling, ML. And then it says data point to apply feature definition to 56 selected elements. So then you just left click in the screen, let us do it work, and now it changed all those elements to milling, pavement milling, and featureize them. Or leave it referenced. I think for what we're doing the next couple exercises, we won't have to do, we did 3.2. We're going to skip 3.3 for the side roads for now. We'll go back and then we'll jump on 3.4. Will give us a little more. We've got the basics for that, so that's going to kind of teach us another tool in the toolbox. So we'll jump to there right now. So we've got the milling lines base in here, and now we're going to learn a couple more tools in order to put our pavement lines in. We used one before, so from the horizontal geometry, we're going to go ahead and do the single offset. But instead of the single offset entire element, we want to go ahead and select single offset partial element. And what that is going to do, since we have stationing off the center line, that's going to give us either lock to a start, or we can enter a start distance, which would be a start stationing, or end distance, which would be a stop stationing, or give it a length. And that's kind of what it's doing on the top of 3-11 for this next tool. So I'll kind of go through this first one with you in order to set that. So what that's going to do is we want to start station. For the first line, we want to start station at 28 plus 00, an offset of 16 feet. So we want to go ahead and set our offset to 16, and then tab. Our length is going to be 500. And then I'll skim ahead real quick. We're going to put a feature definition on this of pavement asphalt EOPA. It's edge of pavement. So we'll go ahead and go to our plans. And then pavement asphalt. It's going to set that in. So right now we have our offset set to 16. We have a length set, but we need to get our start distance set. So what we need to do is select the element. You notice how our stationing changed, and then we can click this for the start distance, and we'll type in 2800.0. And now that's starting this line right at 28. It's giving an offset of 16 and a length of 500, and it's set our feature definition to edge of pavement asphalt. So we can go ahead and accept that. The distance length is just going through the prompts one more time. So this is all left clicks. No, we don't want it to mirror. And if I do an F6, I'm out of that tool. So this line is starting at 28, it's offset at 16 feet, and it's a length of 500. So that's what we'll have to do back on the top of 311 for the second line, the third line, and the fourth line. So the process again for that is set your offset. So the next time you'll want to you can leave this checked in your distance. It'll remember your feature. So the next line is an offset of 32 feet. Then tab. Then I want to excuse me, select the line in order for it to read the stationing. This time the stationing is 33. So we'll go ahead and tab to that and go 33. And we have a 32 offset, and our length is now 600 feet. And tab. So that would be this line that I'm putting in now. And tab out of it, distance, length, no to mirror. The third line that we want to put in is minus 24 feet for an offset. That's where you should go. Oh. So I'm going to go ahead and start over on the lines just to show that again. So I'm going to uncheck the start distance. So I'm going to go ahead and put our first line in. Start station is 28, offset is 16, and then the length is 500. So I'm going to type in the offset of 16. Length of 500, and then I'll go ahead and pick on the line, and that will give me stationing that I can now go and change and put that to 28. And put the line. It's going to remember my offset and the length and the feature definition. Then I just click through, left click the offset and then the distance. And no, I don't want it to mirror. So now I can go ahead and do my next one for 2. So I'm going to set my offset to 32. My length is going to be 600. And then to set my stationing, I'm going to go ahead and click on the alignment. And then I'll go in to my start distance and put that to 33 plus 00. And then tab to lock that. Now that's set my offset to 32, which is correct, and my distance to 16 or 600, and no mirror. So now I'm on line 3. So I'll uncheck my start distance. My offset now is minus 24. My length is set to 300. And tab out of that, go ahead and pick the alignment. And pick my start distance at 30. Tab out of that. So that's going to put line number 3. And now I'm ready for line number 4. So I'm going to uncheck my start distance. That's going to start at 33 plus 00. Minus 24. My length is now 1000. Tab out of that. Pick the alignment. Set my start station. Go ahead and accept and accept. And click that for no. So now I have the 4 lines at the top of 311 placed. It looks like we have another question. Okay, and we're good to go. That. So did everybody get those lines in there? That tool kind of makes sense, partial, so you can kind of set that to the stationing on that. And a lot of the tricks with these is kind of set up the basics and then kind of go through and then set the other ones that you need, the other, I guess, information fields that you need. So that will bring us to, that's all 312. So now we're on top of 313. So we're going to do a baseline on exercise 3.5. So in this exercise, the taper pavement asphalt line off a baseline is created at the following location. So before you attempt this, watch up here and I'll kind of show you what's going on with this tool. So we're done with that guy. I'll go ahead and do F6 to get out. So then again, I'm going to my tasks, the civil tools, and then the A icon. And if I click and hold down on my offset or the parallel, I have a variable offset taper. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that one. So what it's telling us to do is enter. So we need to, from this dialog box, we'll select the alignment. Our start station is going to be 39 plus 0, 0. And then tabs the offset. So our start offset is going to be 20. So that's going to put us here. I need to put my feature. Edge of pavement, so it's going to be that. Select enter to lock. My end offset, I don't want locked. So I need to, my start offset, I'm going to hit select. Now it's going to be vary. So I have my start distance, my start station set, my start offset set, but nothing else is set. What is it doing? And then I want to go ahead and tab Alt, and that will lock me to the end of this stationing. And see how this got checked here and the length? So now I can just do a nearest snap to that point, or to this asphalt milling line that we put in there, is all we're doing on this tool. So if you do an Alt for the tool, it locks, you locked it to the start. If you do an Alt, it locks it to the end. And then we're just doing a nearest snap to this pavement milling line to end our taper.
Does the Alt also work for the start?
You can, yeah. So go ahead and play with that a little bit. With that tool, it gets a little bit tricky on how to set that up, and then I think this tool is probably one of the main ones that we have problems with. And I find myself being tricked with how it works too, a lot of the times.
How do we mess with the offset?
You wanna lock your offset and lock your start. So if you enter or tab out of that, that'll lock your start offset and your start state distance, or your start station. So what that's going to have us do is place a construction line with the single offset partial tool. What I like to do, instead I have this set offset to 0, I set that to 10 or 5 or 10, something that I can actually kind of see, and then I'll go back and adjust that to the center line. It'll kind of make sense after I walk through it. And then we're going to snap to the intersection and put an ending station of 716 plus 50. Section that, and that'll end us right around in this area. And then we'll place a civil cell of our PPM exhibit typical 5. So we'll go ahead and go through that now. So what that is doing, so we're going to go back to our horizontal. What? You want to redo it? I can. We are being recorded. So we're going to go through and pick the single offset partial. So instead of edge of pavement, I'm going to go back up here and change this to a construction line, maybe. We'll do red dash, so green, does that show? A green dash, so we'll do a green dash and then set that active. That's going to change this. So I'm going to change this to 10. It says 0 in the book, but this makes it a little bit easier to place it because we actually want the center line attached to that construction, not the center line of this. It'd kind of be different when you're actually have a workflow and doing it, but this way it kind of works better on that. And then I want to uncheck these. So 10 foot over. So it's asking me to locate the element, so I locate it. Offset is 10. Now it's asking for an end distance. And that's where I want to pick the construction or intersection. Snap here. Do that backwards. Let's start over. So if I pick my offset, so now it's asking for a start. So I pick the intersection of the baseline in 98 and SR 61 to start it. If I put my center line, so I had construction elements off, so there it's starting at this point. Now I want to come up here and stop it at an end distance of 716.50. So it's going to put it there. And don't mirror in that. So now I have a construction line to be able to place a civil cell on. Everybody get that? Does that make sense?
So line went onto the pavement asphalt. How do I change that? Just re-featurize it?
You started here?
Right, I got the line and everything.
Uh-huh.
My level for my feature was not on the green dash.
Not the green dash? Okay. Just hit F6 to get out of that command. And then what you can do is select that element that you have and go to properties and just change it that way to green dash.
Supposed to be 10 or negative 10 offset?
It doesn't matter either way. Okay. 10 or negative 10 or either. You're just offsetting it from the side. What? I know this is easier to do it. You actually see it. That's how Vern does it. He puts it at 5. Because then you don't know. It's easier to see what you're actually snapping to and then move it over. That's kind of why we're doing that. And the book does have 0, but 10's a little bit easier. We can go back through and change that to 0 after we get the civil cell placed. I'll show you how to do that. This makes it just a little bit easier to pick the line and not the center line. So now we're going to go. Is anybody familiar with civil cells? Kind of, sort of. Okay. There is, I think on our FDOT, up on our menu up here, the FDOT menu, there, the help. There is, under civil cells, we have this tab that has all our civil cells and our DGN libs that are delivered with our workspace. And then if you click on some of these, they have a little description. And then we're working on, if you click on, say, like this would be for approach. If you click on here, we have a FDOT YouTube channel that has a brief description of kind of how they're used and what the references to pick on them for. This would have it for all the different approaches that we have. So that's another way on there. So the civil cells that we're going to place are under the civil tools and civil cell. The first icon is create. We don't want that. We actually want the second icon, which is place civil cell. And that's going to bring up our civil cell dialog. And then if you pick on the ellipses, the three little dots in the corner here, pick, that will bring up all the different DGN libs. And so this is all the different civil cell libraries that we have delivered with our workspace. The one that we need is going to be under FDOT template DGM, is the 4-lane divided arterial. It looks like it's the 45 miles per hour or less. The typical 5. We do have new civil cells that are in accordance to the FDM exhibits that have just gone out. But we'll use the one it has from the book. So if you go ahead and pick on that, and this gives you a preview of what that civil cell is going to look like. The red line, if I zoom in there a little bit, is the reference line that you're picking to place the civil cell. All the dark lines are actually the lines that will come in when you place that civil cell. So go ahead and select the typical PPM exhibit, typical 5. And it's asking, then it's just following the prompts. You want to locate the reference element, and that's our center line. So that's the construction line that we put. And in this case, there is an arrow once you place it. So if you ever had lines that are not, they're drawn differently from what you placed it in, you can change the direction of the line. You're not going to see that change in these civil cells because how this was built, it was all off this center line. And then you just follow the prompt by right-clicking your reset and then left-click to accept the placement of that civil cell, and you have that civil cell placed. And these civil cells, any of the typicals and even the new FDM exhibits are built just like a typical would be built. So you have your center line, then it's built to your inside edge of pavement, and then it's built out from there. So it's the same way that your typical section reads. Did everybody get that placed? Or need help with that? Or and once we place that, we can do an F6 to get out of that command and go ahead and pick on the center line that we put at, or the construction line that we put at -10, and now change that to 0, and that'll put that civil cell right on the chain or the center line. Now, and so at the top of 318, it's asking us to change the front sidewalk utility strip width from 0 feet to a width of 6 feet. We need to make it look like that, then.
That's confusing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I think it's gonna strip out of it.
So that's getting that utility strip out of there. So do the same thing for the other side. So the back of sidewalk needs to be 6. And then the 3 down to 0. So now we're going to go ahead and add a right turn lane.
Oh, sorry.
It's 3.7. So to do that, we're going to our civil cell. We're going to pick intersection out of the intersection DGN lib. That's going to be right turn lane. Now go ahead and pick the right turn lane.
Doesn't say.
Yeah, repeat it for the other side too.
Forget it.
Maybe you'll be all right. So now we're on 3.7. We're going to add a turn lane. So again, pick on the civil cell. And then the right turn lanes are going to be in FDOT _ intersections.dgnlib. And down towards the bottom, right turn lane. And this one, it has two references that we're going to be able to pick. So if you pick on that one, so now it's telling you to locate reference element adjacent pavement EOP. That is this line that we put in for the first reference line.
The pavement asphalt. Okay.
The pavement asphalt, and then the second one is going to be off the civil cell that we placed. And that's going to be this edge of pavement here. And that's what it should look like. And this is kind of where, if these lines you didn't know how these lines were drawn, you can come back and adjust how that civil cell is placed. But since we know this line was drawn this way, and then this line was drawn a certain way, it's going to come in correctly of how that civil cell was referenced in or drawn or created. So then you just right click to reset, and then left click to accept, and you have a right turn lane in there. And then it's going to have us, so we've accepted it, we're going to edit the storage length for the first right turn lane place. So select the tangent line and change the length from 135 to 500 feet. So if we F6 to get out of that place civil cell, we'll go ahead and grab our length. And I believe this one is set at 200 instead of 135. So we need to set that to 500. And this is where we can use the MicroStation trim command to intersect the correct pavement asphalt lines. But we will only want to do that on this edge of pavement for now. So we can trim this to this one. Now it's kind of looking more like a turn lane. And everybody get that? It makes sense how to place that turn lane in there. Everybody's got the right turn lane in there and trimmed and adjusted.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and put more lines in here and do another right turn lane off of the school intersection. So we're going to kind of build that in 3.8 and 3.9. So if you guys want to try that by yourself, I'm going to do it up here, or you can watch up here too. But it kind of seems like everybody's getting to know the tools a little bit and can kind of walk through that themselves. Just letting us know if you need help or whatever. So we're going to go back over to the horizontal single offset partial. We're going to go ahead and uncheck everything. We have construction line checked, which I believe these are going to be edge of pavement lines. So I'm going to come back up to my feature up here and go back to edge of pavement. And that changes that automatically because I have this checked in there. So I want to create the side road pavement, edge of pavements opposite SR 61, left offset at minus 23 feet. So I'm going to change that to minus 23, lock that. So it's telling us we need a begin station, so we want to begin it here and then end it at this point. And it's coming in on the wrong side. We'll just have to change that. And we don't want to mirror it, so we'll come back in here because we know it was on the wrong side. Go ahead and change this to minus 23. That's the other nice thing about these. You can kind of work through the tool, then if you know it's on the wrong side, just put that negative sign and it'll take it back. And we're going to have to do that for the opposite side. So again, we're on the single offset partial. Now this side is going to be 39 feet to the left, so we'll go ahead and pick 39. We're over here, we're locking it to this side and then ending it at that point, no mirror. And then F6 to get out of that tool. Did everybody get those? So now we're going to add another right turn lane using the civil cells. And we're going to place that turn lane to kind of replace this one here. So we'll go down to under the task menu, civil cells, then place civil cell. It should remember it, but I like to just go in there just to make sure it picks the right one. All right, turn lane. We'll go ahead and add the other right turn lane. At the prompt, the first reference select is the widening pavement, so that will be this edge of pavement for the widening. And then the second reference is going to be the side road that we just put in. And it looks like it's falling in there nice. So I'm going to do a right click to reset and then a left click to accept, and it should place that civil cell in there correctly. So now I can do an F6, and it looks like we have to edit that. And go ahead and pick on the edge, and this 200 of how it's going to build needs to be lengthened out to 365. So we'll change that to 365. That's going to extend that out. It looks like it was 16 feet, so that's correct. And then we can kind of go through and do a trim. If we want to extend this line out, we could. So we grab that line, and then we could do another trim. trim that to this part. So now we have our new right turn lane. We can come in here and do another trim. So we could trim this to that intersection there. Does anybody have questions on civil cells or how they're placed, or does that kind of make sense on those? Okay, so that brings us to 3.9 at the top of 324. Here we're going to go ahead and place a simple arc and name this southwest edge of pavement. So that looks like, if you think of this intersection as a quadrant, that's going to place it over in here. So we're going to go back to our horizontal geometry, do our simple arc. The trim and extend should be to none. The radius of this one looks like it's 110 feet.
Is the trim extend to again? Reselect both or not?
The trim extend, you can either, it has none, back, ahead, or both. So if you do none, that's going to do,
It's like fixed.
yeah. So like the back will, depending on how you pick, what line you pick first or reference line you pick first, it'll only trim like the back on there, or a head. If you have a head, it's not going to trim your first line, it'll trim your second line, and vice versa. So it's telling us to locate the first. That's going to be this edge of pavement, and then our second is going to be this edge of pavement, and it's going to put that radius in there. Trim extend to none, so it put that radius in there. And it looks like they're going to have us do that for the next 4 corners. We already have this corner in there, and this has a radius on that, so we can just change this one to 60 of our civil cell. And since we trim that and trim that, that will remember that location that we need, or that fix that we wanted for that one. Likewise with this curve over here, it's set to 25. All we have to do is set that to 60, and that'll trim that back and create that one. So the only other arc that we need to add is over here. That's going to be set to 60. And on this one, we can kind of go through and do those. So I'm going to set this to back. You guys can kind of experiment that, either back or ahead or both. We know what both is going to do, so we'll just kind of tab through that. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this line as the first one, and then this is my second. Place it, and then it says trim back. So it just trimmed this back line. It didn't trim this one. So if we do ahead, it would leave this line and then trim it back here. And if you forget to, say on this arc you placed it, and then you decided, oh, I needed to do a trim, you can go and go back to properties, and it has method down here. Right now it's not selected, or it's selected to none. Nope, that's not it. Sorry. Bear with me a second here. It's going to be spiral. Now, right here where it says trim and extend, it's set to none. I can set that to both, and that'll change that, and it'll remember those trims. So if you've done work and say we trim this one, you didn't want that to trim after we place that civil cell, you can come back on here and actually change that by the method. This trim extend. Alright, so now we're going to jump into one of our first function keys that we've kind of get. So go ahead and hit F11, and that should bring up the Project Explorer if you don't have it tabbed or pinned to the side. And then if you go to the Civil Model tab, that should bring up your civil data and should have a copy of the DSGN RD01 as default. And right now we don't have the linear elements. If you click on that tab, it's going to have all the linear elements that we put in there. So, and they're going to be featureized and milling lines, edge of pavement lines, and every construction lines, everything we've put on there in there so far. So that kind of shows you a record of what we have. It also has our alignments as complex elements. So here's our SR61 that we made, the Friendship Road. So it puts those in as intelligence since we set those features to them. So it brings that in there. And the intervals, there's intervals of a complex element. So it's remembering any trims or connects that we've done on any of the elements in this file. So that's kind of where you would kind of go. You could go in there, and I think we do that in chapter 5 or chapter 6 and later chapters, kind of see how an element is built. But that's where that would be in the linear elements. We're more concerned in our civil cells, so we want to click on that plus, and it's going to have a right turn lane, 2 right turn lanes, and then our PPM exhibit. So what we want to do in the PPM exhibit is do a right click on it and drop it, and that's going to allow us to edit and trim it back. And this is going to be on top of our exercise 3.10 on top of 327. And when you drop a civil cell, it disappears from this list. It's still a civil cell, but it's editable. You can change it. In order to get that civil cell back into the library or into your model, you would have to create it again from the center line. So any changes, if you drop it and make changes to it, you own that civil cell now. So if you would have to go back and place another PPM, you'd have to go back in there and actually place it from the DGen library. So it's telling us we want to, so this exercise takes advantage of the design intent to modify the curve and sidewalk lines of our SR61 to the new curve radius endpoint. So we want to grab what is our curved face, and then grab our arrow so we can change that back and drag that back to the radius. And that should bring everything back that's attached to those lines on there. Does that make sense to everybody? So the first thing you got to do, unless somebody else had, is move it off this intersection where we snapped it to, and then you should be able to manipulate these back to the curves that you want. And then we're kind of doing what you were said before, is trim this. We want to leave this line in there for now because we got to put our median or our island in here, and it needs these 2 lines. But then we would trim this back to that point, or that line. I think that's what the exercise in 3.10 is doing. Yes, that's on this one. I think a lot of people were having that too, and I've had that. Is where this was stuck to 0, 0. If you move it off just slightly, these civil cells are kind of finicky and picky. So if you move that off just slightly off that intersection, then you can manipulate all the other sides of how it was placed. So it remembers how it was placed even though you dropped it. So that's I think that's the reason. So that's when I was first starting this, that's why I was trying to find this and move it off, just a tad bit off of where we snapped it to here. But that's what this I believe is what it should start looking like, is here. To turn that back. The other problem I think is when we adjusted that to 0 was putting two lines on top of each other, and we weren't picking the right line, because if you remember, it's how it was built. So it did this line, and then from this your edge of your back of curb is a parent of your front sidewalk. So since we changed that, we were trying to change the child before we changed the parent. I believe is how those were working in there. So that kind of puts us up, unless anybody has questions, up to 311. That's good. So we can walk through that, and it's going to place another civil cell. So let's go ahead and go back to our task menu, and then civil cells, place civil cell. And this time we're going to go to our curb sidewalk lines. And again, that's going to be in our FDOT _intersections.dgnlib. And go ahead and pick that. It's going to prompt us to pick the edge of pavement line. So we'll pick that of our radius. And it doesn't matter how that was drawn because we only have one reference line to put in there. And then do a right click and then a left click to accept. And then it will have us adjust once we get there. So do an F6 to get out of that tool. And then we want to adjust our sidewalks. So I need to come back. Looks like to this guy. I'm just going to leave that. Adjust our sidewalk back to 0. And adjust this out to -6. So that kind of makes sense. I mean, civil cells, they can be tricky, but once you get to know how they're built and how to use them, they seem a lot easier. So now with that civil, does everybody have the sidewalk placed off of the curve, that first curve? Because now we're going to go ahead and on exercise 3.12 create a custom civil cell or custom curb and sidewalk lines to kind of have, so we can make that easier to place for the other sides. So the first step in that is to actually drop our civil cell that we have in there of the sidewalks. To do that, we can either go to civil cells and then drop civil cell, and then using that dialog box right here, we'll use that key. We go ahead and pick the civil cell that we just placed and drop it. And we adjusted those, and now if we want to come back, and the other way would go to your Project Explorer. It's not in the list anymore because we already dropped it. Come back under your task menu and go to create civil cell. And it's going to be a reference line. The name of this will be custom curb. Tab out to the reference pane. Will be the edge of pavement. It highlights the civil cell that it's going to create off of that. So there again, it's creating that parent-child. So the parent is the edge of pavement. The child is all the civil cell that was placed off of that. And then we'll go ahead and do a right-click to reset of that, and then do a left-click to accept that civil cell. Now we have a civil cell in the actual drawing that we're working in. To place that, so here's the custom civil cell that we just built for the sidewalk. We want to place that over on this side. So we can either do it from our Project Explorer and do a right click on that and say place civil cell, and then go ahead and locate this other side. And there, now you're kind of seeing how you can adjust of what side this needs to come on. So that's not really the right side, so we'd have to left click and then get it to place on the right side, and go ahead and do a reset by right mouse click, and then do an accept by a left mouse click. Did everybody get that far? Get that created in that civil cell? So we can go ahead and add that custom to this arc down here, the northeast corner edge of pavement line. Add that civil cell to there.
When we pick it from the civil cell from the civil tool, the custom one can be found where?
The custom one can be found in the active design up above. And that'll actually have all the civil cells that you've placed. That's where it's going to put it as in the active design file. Because you actually can't write into the DGN libs that are there. Those are read-only since they're delivered. But that's kind of a good point. It'll put any civil cells that you add to it, it'll put in the active file that you're in. And we could actually put, it doesn't matter that we created the curb and sidewalk on a curve. We can actually put that on a center line and it'll put in correctly. So, and it's actually if you create a civil cell that's going to be, that will go on a tangent, it's better to put it on a little bit of a radius instead of a straight line. Because if you just put it on a straight line, when you're building it, it might not always come in correctly on a radius or a curve. So it's better to put a little bit of curve on the civil cell if you want to create it. So that's going to bring us up to 313 to place a traffic separator. So we'll go ahead and try and place that and then probably take a break. And that should take us up to 230. Take a break. And I think this is kind of where we get hung up too, so kind of watch up here real quick, and I'll place it we'll place and kind of explain what's going on. So here we're going to place a traffic or left turn lane with a traffic separator. And again, we've got our preview window that has the reference and then what actually is going to be drawn in with that civil cell. So in this case, it's telling us to locate the reference element side road. So our center line of the side road will actually be the baseline of 98. And then it's going to ask us to locate the reference element of the left median edge of pavement. So that's going to be this guy. Nope, I did that wrong. So I've got this center line right, but then instead of this edge of pavement that I picked on, it should be this edge of pavement over here. So if I just right click out of that, that gets me out of that tool completely. So again, I can pick the center line of the side road, and then if I come in here and pick this element, and in this one, how this was drawn, so this is kind of a good example of how you need to change or think about how the civil cell is drawn and how your lines are placed. So all I have to do to be able to get that place right is adjust, click on the reference elements, and now that's going to come in on this side. So what this civil cell is doing is creating a storage lane for this left turn, and then this is the radius of that turn to the center line of this other. So now if I right click to cancel and then left click to accept, it's going to place a left turn lane with a traffic separator and a radius on this, and then it's just kind of coming back and trimming these other information or these lines to that. So if you guys want to go ahead and get on that and try that one, and then we'll kind of go through a break or have a break and come back. And then for cleanup on that one, you just trim the lines from the civil cell back to your edge of curb, face of curb, and edge of pavement on your turn lane side. And then on your other side, you will trim your back of curb, face of curb, and edge of pavement to this construction line here. Then if you do an F7, that'll show your construction lines off, and that's kind of how that traffic separator, or that left turn lane with the traffic separator should look.